Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar called How to Improve Your SAC Higg FEM Score and Updates to the How to Higg Guide. My name is Karin Ekberg, and I'm the manager of the consulting company Leadership and Sustainability. Before I started my own company, I worked several years at Adidas in the role of Head of Environmental Services, and before that at other companies managing sustainability at corporate level. Also presenting today is Alaaddin Okur. Alaaddin, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Alaaddin. I have been working on sustainability, environmental sustainability in textile sector for 6 years. I have involved different type of certification and sustainability projects such as Nordics One Eco Label, Civil and Textile Water Initiative, Green to Wear, especially Higg Index Facility Environment Module since 2015.
Thank you, Alaaddin. Today we will introduce you to the SAC Higg FEM Facility Environmental Module. We will then briefly also discuss the general verification process. We will spend quite some time discussing how you can improve your Higg FEM score, including running you through the various updates to the How to Higg guide, section by section. And we will also, of course, have time for questions and discussion. And finally, we will present our team to you. And let me now introduce you to the SAC Higg FEM as a member of the Higg Index suite of tools. This slide gives you an overview of the Higg Index tools. The suite of tools covers the brand and retail module, which you can see here in the middle, which means that they focus on the corporate level of brands and retailers. Facility modules, to the left, focusing on manufacturing sites, either your own or your suppliers, and then product tools, focusing on the product level. And I would like to give you an overview of the Higg FEM, the Facility Environmental Module, before we move into more details. The Higg FEM is an online self-assessment tool for facilities. The FEM is divided into several sections. There is a section where you give information about your facility, and there are also applicabilities linked to this, and we will talk more about applicabilities later. Then we have the EMS, the Environmental Management System section. We have the Energy Use and Greenhouse Gas section, Water section, Wastewater section, Air Emissions, Waste, and also Chemicals Management. At the beginning, there are those applicability questions, and based on the factory response to these questions, the actual sections questions are selected automatically. So depending on if you are a cut and sew garment factory, you are a dye house, or any other type of facility, you will get the corresponding set of questions that are relevant for your business. The questions are also sorted into 3 levels, levels 1, 2, 3. 1 is the lowest, and this means the foundational level, the progressive level, and the aspirational level. And SAC clearly has an intention to drive towards aspirational levels. And the total score that you can get in every section is 100 scores. So you can get at level 1, 25 scores, 50 at level 2, and 25 at level 3. But also a bit depending on the applicability questions, you may get more scores only at level 1 if you only have questions at level 1 that are relevant to you. And also just to be aware, to achieve 100 scores in a section, it's extremely aspirational, and that's really the intent also of the tool, that there will always be room for improvement. So please don't be discouraged or disencouraged if you have lower levels, or if you only reach level 1 as a start, for example. There are annual reporting and verification cycles. And the self-assessment in this year for the 2018 results, you can upload them until June 30th. And then the higg.org closes down for self-assessments. It will open up again, but only for new facilities. So if you're already registered, you are an existing facility of a brand, for example, have been requested to conduct the self-assessment, you need to do that by June 30th. And start soon enough so that you are sure that you can really finalize everything and upload your results and also post them on the higg.org platform before end of June. Also for next year, please be aware that the deadline for the self-assessment will actually be 2 months earlier. So it will be April 30th in 2020 then. The verification can take place anytime, January to December. And but obviously, since many facilities are doing their self-assessments now, there are not so many verifications taking place in the very first months of the year. But we are actually already verifying right now. Then, in most cases, the verification takes place on site. There is the possibility to do off-site verifications as well. But for example, you cannot verify section levels 2 and 3 of the chemical section off-site. And also there are restrictions in what you can communicate about your results if you do an off-site verification. So we do recommend an on-site verification. Guidance to the factories, brands, and verifiers is given in the How to Higg document, which is publicly available. And when you receive this presentation, you can also click on the link you can see here and you can download the PDF document, or you can read the guidance also online. It's a very comprehensive guidance, but also very helpful. And now let me walk you through also the verification process. So we have identified 7 simple process steps. The first one is to engage the verifier, and you need to provide information about your factory. So what type of factory, what type of manufacturing do you have, the number of employees, are you using chemicals in production, etc. So there are a lot of information that we would like to have in order to plan for the verification. And the reason is, for example, we need to decide if you need a chemical specialist verifier or if a generalist is suitable. So in any case, if you are have completed or are doing level 2 and 3 in the chemical section, you need to have a chemical specialist verifier. A generalist verifier can only verify level 1 in the chemical section. So really important to differentiate for this because there are much fewer chemical specialist verifiers available than generalist verifiers. And also with this information that you give us, we can estimate the number of days that we need on site. Then you need to complete your self-assessment and you make the self-assessment available to the verifier. The verifier review the documents before he comes to on-site. That's the ideal situation. If everything is available, he or she can do that. And then also the verifiers send you an agenda ahead of the visit, and you have the on-site visit and you have the reporting, and you can post your results, your verified module then on higg.org. And there is also available a protocol for the on-site verification that SAC has developed. It gives you information about the verification process and, for example, how many days to calculate on-site depending on the number of employees and also the complexity of manufacturing. And SAC has fine-tuned this information, this guidance for this year. So there is a lot of information available from SAC as well. And now I will talk about the experience we have gained during our verifications over the past year and how you can improve your score. We have verified in countries like El Salvador, United States, United Kingdom, Romania, Portugal, Turkey, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Malaysia, China, Kenya, Tanzania, and Tunisia. So we have spent a lot of time in a lot of different countries verifying. We have conducted more than 40 verifications last year, ranging from 1 day to 5 days of duration. and we have conducted both general and chemical specialist verifications. So on this call, you have both Alaaddin and myself. Both of us are also chemical specialist verifiers. And now we wish to share some experience from these verifications. I will, of course, not mention any brand or factory name or specific factory examples that can be traced back to that particular factory or brand. Absolutely not. We always work on a confidential note. And as you know, there is also a lot of content in the FEM, and I have picked a few examples. We will also give you some highlights regarding the most important updates to Higg FEM and the How to Higg. And first, some general advice. You do need to read the How to Higg guidance. It's a very long document. I'm aware of that. And you don't need to read every detail there, but please, if you are unsure about how to understand a question, go to the How to Higg and have a look. There are lots of explanations. There is technical guidance available, and there is also very specific guidance available for the verifier. And this is, of course, also for you as a facility, also helpful information. And then also make sure that you respond to the questions comprehensively and document all your responses in the tool on the higg.org platform. SAC requires documentation proof for nearly all questions. The SAC guidance on how to verify, the How to Higg guidance, is very strict regarding documentation, stricter actually than any ISO management system. Please be aware of that, and please don't be disappointed if you don't score at the level you wish to if you don't provide those documents. And we have cases where you may have confidential documents that you don't want to upload on the platform. You don't need to upload any confidential information at all. Please don't do that, but please be aware that you should be able to show the documents to the verifier so that the verifier can really do his or her job also correctly. And then regarding setting targets and baselines, you need to define them well, and they should also be stable. So you should not change the baseline year each and every year you report. That makes it very complicated for you to really drive improvements in your factory. So for example, choose a baseline year of 2017, and then you set your annual goals moving forward, always comparing with 2017. And also, when you prepare for the verification, ask for environmental specialists, persons who have an environmental background. It's really important when you conduct an environmental verification that the verifier understands the manufacturing processes, understands how to follow the processes, understands where air emissions are being created or where waste is being created, etc., so that they really can understand what are the impacts and what are the risks and even what are the opportunities in the factory. Ask verifiers also to send you an agenda in advance so that you can prepare. They may also have document lists that they can send you in advance. And if you have any questions, contact your verifier in advance and ask about the process. Of course, especially if it's the first time for you, please let them explain how they conduct the verification. And also, of course, have your documents available in the room where you do the verification or on site whenever you do the factory on-site tour. And please also be prepared to explain why you have responded in a particular way. It's very difficult for the verifier to understand your process of thinking or your process of decision making. That's your task to explain that to the verifier. And so please be prepared to also explain what you have been doing. And also be aware, SAC really stresses this point. It should not be an audit. And I know it's very difficult to release ourselves, all of us, from the idea of having an audit. The verification should also be like a guidance session for you. It should be a possibility, an opportunity for you to also really improve your performance and discuss questions you have as well with the verifier. Then it's important also to upload the documents you want to share in the right place. So in the place where the question itself is. And for those of you who have already started your self-assessment, you know that for every question, there is a spot where you can upload documents. And I am aware that this sounds very trivial and very simple, but believe me, I have seen many facilities lose scores because they haven't spent enough time to understand the questions, respond correctly, and document their responses. And you know, the verifiers, they have very clear guidance on how they should verify. In the How to Higg, it is outlined what is needed for a full yes, for a partial yes, where that is applicable, and for a no. And the verifier, of course, has to follow this guidance. And also one other thing, of course, you would like to improve your score, etc. But I think also there is a need for caution here. So don't just hunt the best scores. Don't follow Higg FEM blindly, but please also make sure that you do what makes sense to your facility and company. You are not forced to always improve your score in all areas. There may be areas where you think it's more important to spend your time. Perhaps you want to focus on wastewater treatment. Perhaps you want to focus on air emissions. Perhaps you need to focus on chemicals management for a while. And so the plan that you do, your performance improvement plan, it really needs to fit your plans and your resources as well. And of course, I know you may get input from your buyers, from the brands and retailers, and obviously they may ask you to focus on one area at a time, on a specific area. Of course, this is also then part of the negotiation that you have with your buyers. And now let's just also briefly touch upon the first section and the updates in the How to Higg. So the facility site info, there have been a few smaller updates. So for example, the facility type definitions, they have been updated. The material types and the guidance has been updated. Guidance related to the total number of employees. And there are some other details that also have been updated. And obviously, this is already online in the self-assessment tool, so you don't need to go to How to Higg and learn about those updates in order to do it correctly. And just a session, I think we have someone asking a question. Yes, we have a question here. For a dry facility, please advise if chemical management is included in the scoring. Yes, chemical management is included for all facilities, but with different questions depending on your manufacturing processes and your facility type. And then let's move on to the EMS section, the Environmental Management System section. So there are some important updates in the How to Higg. They have added international recognized AMS frameworks to the technical guidance. A facility should check laws and regulations to determine whether their local government has rules governing the process of evaluating likely environmental impacts of the facilities in operation, and that needs to be followed. And if there are no local regulations, an impact assessment can be conducted following, for example, the IFC performance standard and also the World Bank health and safety guidelines. But also a word of caution regarding the World Bank document. That document is actually from 2007. And in my view, there are lots of other guidelines available also online from brands and retailers who have developed really good guidelines. So please have a look online for other guidelines document like this. Then there is a template for tracking the local regulations and permit requirements. At a minimum, it is advised to create a regularly updated document that tracks your environmental permit review and update approach on a set schedule. This is one question that you need to follow. And the content of the tracking document can include environmental impact areas, permit name, permit status, key responsible person, etc. And you may also go further and create a detailed standard operating procedure to monitor compliance of all the permit requirements. And there is template available, a really good template from SAC. And when you get this presentation, you can download that from this link that you can see here. And now regarding our recommendations in the section EMS, Environmental Management System, there is a question there, the question 2 actually, about a long-term environmental strategy. And this means here, and is required, that you have a strategy that reaches more than 3 years into the future. And a good environmental strategy should address your facility's significant environmental impacts and compliance obligations as prioritized in your environmental impact assessment. It needs to be supported by facility leadership. It needs to be communicated to all employees. And to ensure environmental objectives are carried out, your strategy should include plans for achievement that detail, for example, what will be done, what resources will be required, who will be responsible, when it will be completed, and how the results will be evaluated. And also, if you have an environmental strategy that aligns with the requirements in ISO 14001, you may answer yes to this question. And we actually see a lot of failures here. This is a very important document and a very important tool for your entire environmental program for a facility. So please spend time, convince your management about the need for a long-term environmental strategy. Make sure that you have a good framework here, because this will really influence your improvement and your results in the environmental area. And of course, if you cannot respond yes here, you will also not be able to move on to level 2 in the EMS section. So you know that at level 1, the questions, you need to be able to respond yes or partial yes to all questions at level 1 before you are allowed to move on to level 2. And that is true for every section, not only for this one. Okay, so let me move on to energy use and greenhouse gases. There have been mostly smaller updates, such as clarifications or suggesting of supporting documents to upload. But there are 2 points that I want to note here. And that is that there is a clarification that the energy audit can be conducted by qualified internal or external auditors. And last year, they actually asked for external auditing to do this. But you can do that also with internal teams. And also regarding the goal setting and the target setting, and this is true for every such area, you need to enter a negative percentage if you have a reduction target and a positive percentage for an increased usage target. So you want to save energy, then you need to put in a negative percentage for your saving target. And our recommendations, in order to get a full score here, you need to target larger than 80% of your consumption when setting goals. You can decide to work with absolute or normalized targets. When setting targets related to energy consumption in manufacturing, it makes sense to normalize the targets. For example, to calculate energy consumption per production unit. This way, if your production goes down or up, you will not be punished or suddenly credited for something you couldn't influence. With normalized targets, you can make sure that you have comparable results even though production goes down or up. And also let me read from the How to Higg regarding the 80%. You will receive full points if you set targets for energy sources that make up 80% or more of your total energy use. You will receive partial points if you set targets for energy sources that make up 50 to 79% of your total energy use. This is to reward you for aiming to improve your most significant sources of energy use, which will maximize environmental impact. So this means that if you have a goal or a target for covering less than 50%, you will not get any score at all. And now we also have an interesting situation here. Let's say you have reduced your greenhouse gas emissions by installing solar panels, and they contribute to more than 20% of your total energy consumption. Now, when you wish to set your next year's targets, how would you now be able to set a target covering more than 80% of your total use? If you do that, then you also need to reduce the energy coming from the solar panels. But of course, you should not be punished for this. So you need to find some way to work around this. And I have checked the updated How to Higg. I couldn't find any guidance here, and I have also asked SAC to consider this situation and give guidance on how to deal with this situation. Also, don't forget to communicate the target to relevant employers. And finally, regarding an implementation plan, and this guidance is applicable to any goal or target you may have, you need to develop a clear implementation plan specifying the actions you need to take in order to reach your target, who is responsible, etc. And SAC has made a template available that you will be able to access also again once you have received the presentation. And now I would like to ask Alaaddin to present the updates for the water section.
Okay, let's move on to water with me. Again, mostly similar updates have been made to this section. Firstly, definition of recycled reused water as processed water clarified according to GRI, Global Reporting Initiative. G4's explanation of indicator EN10, recycled or reused water is defined as an act of processing used water or wastewater through another cycle before discharge to final treatment and or discharge to environment. It specifies three general types of water recycling or reuse practices. First is that wastewater recycle back in the same process or higher use of recycled water in the process cycle. Second is that wastewater recycle or reuse in the different process but within the same facility. And third is that wastewater reuse at another of the reporting organization facilities. In accordance with indicator EN10, this can include water that was treated prior to reuse and water that was not treated prior to reuse. It can also include collected rainwater and wastewater generated by household processes such as washing dishes, laundry, and bathing, grey water. And do not forget and make sure to enter a negative percentage on Higg for a reduction target and a positive percentage for an increased usage target. And another updates suggested uploads for question 1 and 4. Also, there is clarification that water use is intended to mean water withdrawal in question 6. Next slide, please. Yeah. When it comes to the water section, one question is which facility processes or operations use the most water? Question 3. And this is an important question, and for energy you have a similar question previously. In order to respond to this question, you need to know the processes that use water, and you should have measured the quantities that go into each process. Other questions related to baseline, target, action, and reduction. For baseline, to understand reduction, starting point is measure K. Setting a baseline allows you to have a clear reference point for water reuse, monitoring, and target setting. Then you need to set target like 3%, 5% reduction. Target setting must cover more than 80% of consumption minimum. And here we have a similar situation as for energy too. If you want to give an example, use rainwater and your consumption from rainwater is less than 20% of your total consumption, and you have only target for rainwater. Then you have an issue when defining a target that covers more than 80% of your total consumption. In this case, you need to define another target for another resources too. If you have a target, you need to have an action plan that covers responsible deadline, budget, etc. to achieve this target. So we need to see them. If you have done all these things and reduced water consumption, you will get another point from your success. In here, I suggest facilities that set different baseline target actions and monitor reduction specifically for like finishing, washing, dyeing, if you have a different type of processes. Yeah, that's all from me, Karin.
Thank you so much, Alaaddin. So let's move on to wastewater. Here there have been several updates, again, mostly smaller ones, but I want to take note of two specifically. So in the wastewater section, the wastewater question 4 has been moved from level 1 to level 2. It's now question 7. And the reason is this is the question about meeting additional wastewater standards beyond what is legally required. And that's also the reason that this question has been moved, because level 1 generally covers the legal requirements and the basic requirements. And this wastewater standard question about following other standards is really the next level at level 2. And also therefore the scoring at level 2 has been adjusted. And then in that same question, the question 7, all wastewater standards now receive equal points if the parameters are tested and met. And you can see here also the list of a lot of different other updates. For example, also a clarified definition for zero liquid discharge. There was some confusion previously about what should count as zero liquid discharge, and that has now been clarified. Our recommendations regarding wastewater. So, of course, we all know wastewater treatment may be very complex, and depending on the applicability, it may be quite difficult for facilities to respond to all questions. Either you have only domestic water, or you have a combination of domestic and industrial wastewater, and therefore also again you will respond to a set of different questions, and the scores will also differ. We see here that there are only very few of the facilities who report against, for example, the ZTHC wastewater guidelines, which has defined 3 levels of wastewater qualities, independent of the discharge actually, if into a river or into a municipal wastewater treatment plant. But these levels are quite aspirational, and facilities who are reporting against these guidelines are actually really expected to do well in terms of wastewater quality level. So this is quite an aspirational question. We have also seen during our verifications, and this is related to the recycling question, the question 11, we have seen a few facilities who are recycling their process water, which is really encouraging, but most facilities recycle the water for irrigation. So basically in the end, that water stream is also then lost. But 1 or 2 that we have seen are actually recycling process water back into the process, which is of course the ideal situation. And then Alaaddin, I would like to hand over back to you again for the air emissions update.
Okay, air emission updates. Yes, air emission is a difficult section. To help with this, several updates have been made in terms of providing guidance, for example, pertaining to types of emissions and CFCs and HCFCs. Important updates. Guidance on types of emissions in the introduction and CFCs and HCFCs in the introduction have been added. If CFCs and HCFCs, ozone depleting substances, are used on-site solution to phase out these gases should be considered. One solution is to use with low GWP global warming potential, such as HFOs in the application of refrigerants, aerosol propellants, and foam blowing agents. Also, I would like to say that this is a very crucial point. SAC takes this very seriously, ozone depleting substances. If there is a refilling CFC or HCFC, you are not going to achieve level 2 and 3. And I recommend you that facilities change air condition system if you refill. Please also refer to following list of refrigerants with reference numbers to determine which of your refrigerants are important to track and phase out. There are another updates, definition to applicability, air emitting sources, technical guidance to question 1, question 2, 4, and 7 have been added. I suggest you read these guidance in detail while you are filling out the self-assessment. In addition, yes and partial yes definition for question 4 and 5 have been updated. Question 6 refers to boilers has been clarified too. For self-assessment in air emission section, there are applicability questions regarding production and other steps that produce air emissions. You should choose correctly your operations equipment like boiler, generator, ovens. The first question is question 1. Select all sources of air emissions relevant to your facility's operations that are not regulated by a permit or for which your facility is not in compliance with its permits. So you need to monitor also air emissions which are not under the scope of local legislations. Question 2 is very confusing for facilities, so I would like to explain a little bit that. This question is just for indoor air pollution, fugitive sources from production processes without stack that emit into building outside through windows, doors. You shouldn't enter your air emissions that are emitted from your stacks. You can calculate and track by using health and safety indoor air quality test reports by estimating airflow in your facility yearly. So you need to do these tests yearly and you should take some actions to reduce air emissions. One question covers refrigerants and asks if any refrigerant has been refilled. If yes, then there must be a leak points and you should these points will be deducted. There are also questions about control devices as well as questions about going beyond the regulatory requirements. Air pollution control devices, question 4 and 5. The intention of these questions are to understand the facility has effective implementation to control indoor and outdoor air pollution. For example, dust collector, air scrubbers. Question 6 is that, has your facility gone beyond permit requirements to achieve a higher level of air performance in nitrogen oxide, sulfur oxide, and particulate matter? So you need to check your outdoor emissions test results and answer by comparing results with limit table in How to Higg guide. And there are 3 types of limits in there: foundational, strategic, and aspirational. You should click based on what you achieved. Question 7 is that question 7 is related to your emission control method. One example of modernized machinery is electrostatic precipitator or flue gas desulfurization. Also, improvement or enhancement of fuel system or switching to alternative or cleaner fuel could be considered as an abatement process. For example, using natural gas instead of fuel oil in boiler. So that's all for air emission for now, Karin.
Thank you so much, Alaaddin. All right, so waste is the next section. This is quite a long section, and SAC has tried to incorporate updates that provide more guidance on a lot of questions. Again, one thing which is important here is to make sure to enter a negative percentage for a reduction target and a positive percentage for an increased use target. And then there are a lot of added guidance and different additional information related to nearly all questions actually. And I would like to move over now to our recommendations here. So again, compared to the many other sections, this section is quite long. This is probably the second longest section next to the chemical section, which is absolutely the longest section. And we have a few questions also, for example, related to storage. And especially important here is the storage of hazardous waste. Please take care to follow the guidance here and make sure that you also on site in the factory can show that you follow the guidance from SAC. And again, the reduction target, it needs to apply and cover more than 80% of the total waste. Or 50 to 79, but then you only get a reduced score. And so this may mean that you need to have several waste categories that have their specific targets. And there are also questions, of course, related to disposal methods, aiming at improving also the disposal methods. For example, being able to recycle waste or have a more environmentally friendly treatment of the waste. And now let's move over to the final section, the chemicals management section. And this is the most complex section for most of the facilities that we have seen. There has been several updates to the chemical section. And you can see the list of updates here. For example, GHS, the Globalized Harmonized System, has been updated, or the equivalent directives has been included here in the Q1 guidance. But let me move over to the recommendations that we have. The chemical section has been aligned with the ZDHC, the Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals program. It's very comprehensive. It has in total 23 questions, and it's also very complex. There are applicability questions, which means that, for example, garment factories that don't use a lot of chemicals will have much fewer questions to respond to than, for example, dye houses. But there is no way that you can avoid responding to any chemical questions. You still, in all factories, will still have chemical questions that you need to respond to, and still quite a few actually. And even at level 1, the chemical section is really challenging. The first question asks for a chemical inventory. This is of course a basic requirement, but my experience is that many factories that actually use quite a lot of different chemical formulations don't have a complete inventory. Some chemicals may be missing, or the inventory doesn't contain all the information it should. And since this is so basic, how are you going to reduce the use of chemicals or substitute chemicals or control your chemicals if you don't have an inventory? So please spend time building a really robust and good inventory. Another question is related to SDS, safety data sheets. In my experience, many factories need to improve here too. Either the SDS are not available, they are very old. We have even seen SDS that are 10 years old or older, or they are not available where chemicals are used. And please, and this is really for the safety of the workers in the factory, please have the SDS readily available wherever chemicals are used or stored. Really important. And we will, when we do the verification, we will check on this. We will follow and trace several of your chemicals and have a look at how you deal with them. And we will also speak with your teams locally to understand if they have received training, for example. And there is also one question that covers the selection and buying of chemicals according to RSL and MRSL, the Manufacturing Restricted Substances List. This is also quite a challenging question. And yeah, and please spend time learning this, even if you can't respond yes today. Please add it to your program, and so that you can have a good RSL and MRSL program implemented in your factory as well. And you know that most brands and retailers today will ask that not only for an RSL but also for an MRSL. And as mentioned, there are many more questions, but I wish to focus on just a few right now. And one question that asks factories to source chemicals from positive lists, and this is actually Q16, so I believe this should be level 3. This is an extremely challenging question because it is not always clear-cut to differentiate between RSL, MRSL, and positive lists. There is a lot of confusion around here, and it's also, even for the verifiers, it's difficult to know exactly how the factory is dealing with this. We have seen chemical suppliers, they screen their chemicals against an MRSL, like for example the ZDHC MRSL, and then they promote the list of these chemicals as a positive list. But at least in my view, this is just a list of I am not MRSL chemical list. So this is just a screened list, and it doesn't go beyond the screening. And so this is a bit confusing, really, and we need to be very careful. Also, we verifiers, when we verify these questions and several others in the chemicals management section. Then I want to show you a picture that hopefully we don't we don't see too much, but actually we do from time to time. And we don't want to believe that those pictures are still true today, but fact is they are. So last year in one of the dye houses I visited, they supply to well-known brands in the upper price class. These brands are signatories to many of the common programs in our sector and often speak about the sustainability achievements. But I don't believe they have ever been in that factory that I visited. And by the way, this photo is not from that factory. This is a completely independent photo. The workers handling chemicals, they were walking around in shorts, so short trousers, and with the upper part of the body naked, without anything, and with beach sandals on their feet, plastic beach sandals on their feet, on a very slippery shop floor and storage floor. And one client RSL, restricted substances list, had never been implemented, and the other could also not be found. Instead, an unspecific list of chemicals restrictions had been downloaded from the internet, and suppliers' declarations were accepted against that general list of purchase requirements. But please, let's make sure that chemicals are handled safely and that workers are protected. This is very, very much about the protection of the workers working in your factories. And I think this is really, really important. And also now, let's talk a bit about how to manage chemicals from a system perspective. I am a big fan of management systems, and that is also true for chemical management systems. So why do I like them? Well, they give you a structured and systematic way to approach any sustainability issue. This means that you can repeat and duplicate approaches, and you can harmonize in your own factory or brand. On this chart, you can see some of the elements of a chemical management system. You need a commitment from your management and your teams. You need to identify the chemicals and the chemical formulations you have. You need to build your inventory, as we mentioned before. You need to assess your chemicals for risks, and then you need to identify the chemicals and processes of concern. So not only the chemicals, but also where are those chemicals used? So those are the processes of concern. You need to set up your organizational structure, build awareness and train people. You need to set goals, follow up on goals. You need to audit, verify, have a corrective action plan, and finally management review, and of course continuous improvement. So continuous improvement is the overarching goal of every management system. And this slide may look quite complicated, but actually all elements of from this slide are also included in the chemical section of the FEM. And one other thing, I don't want to go into too much detail about the health and safety program in factories. The Higg FEM doesn't cover health and safety at any depth, really, but I wish to give you just a few examples. First of all, we see a lot of focus on PPE, personal protective equipment in the factory, and that's good, and how it should be. However, just as a reminder, PPE should not be the first choice. This illustration shows the hierarchy of measures related to chemicals. The measure at the top, replaced with the lower toxicity chemicals, is the first priority, and then we have process changes, is isolation of chemicals, and only second last comes PPE, and last we have incident response, which we hope that we will never have to implement. So you see from this hierarchy, PPE should only be used when no other measures are doable or have already been implemented. On another note regarding safety, you will ask yourself what this picture is doing here in this presentation. Well, I have asked myself many times what shoes like this are doing in a factory setting. We actually sometimes see factory staff and verifiers doing factory visits with shoes like this. These shoes are not made for factory visits, and they are also not safe to conduct a factory visit in, and not even in a garment factory. Anyone visiting the factory should use safety shoes, or if they don't have that, but hopefully more robust shoes than the first pair I showed, stay within marked up areas and not visit, for example, wet processing or chemical storage areas. All right, so with that, we have finished the chemical section as well, and we are now ready to take your questions. And I will see if we have received any questions here. Let me open this up. Yeah. We have a question here regarding the difference between on-site and off-site verification. Yes, a facility can choose. You can do only a facility, you can do only an off-site verification if you wish to. And that is then being done just online. We have an opening meeting. You send all your documents. We get access to your online tool or an Excel export, and we go through the questions similar to what we would do on site. But of course, it's very difficult to do a factory tour. We ask you to send photos from the factory, but it's not the same as going on site and really having a look at all installations and, for example, waste storage and the chemicals management, etc. But also in your communication about your off-site verification, you are restricted. So you cannot communicate your score publicly. Later, when SAC is ready to publicly communicate the scores, you cannot do that if you have an off-site verification. And also, if you have reached levels 2 and or 3 in the chemical section, those sections cannot be verified. So for example, we actually had that case, a factory that did an off-site verification, they had reached even level 3 in the chemical section, and now in the off-site verification, we are only allowed to verify level 1 because we do the off-site. So all the scores gained at levels 2 and 3 were lost. So I hope that clarifies your question, and otherwise please contact me directly. And then let's see, can we use brand target? Yes, I think you mean if you have from the buyer, from your brand that you are working for, that they have given you a target, for example, for energy saving, that you should save, I don't know, 2% or 3% per year. Yes, you can absolutely use those. And if we don't have the required space for solar panels, what alternatives do we have? Yes, this may be a bit detailed question. There are, of course, other renewable energy sources that you can use, but it's very difficult to answer that question in a general way now. So if you wish, you can please reach out to us in person, and we can discuss this based on what your factory looks like. Yes, there is also a question here. Do you know if recycled reuse of water also includes cascade use of water, so reuse of water multiple times before sending to wastewater treatment plant? Yes. It depends a bit how the process is, how you can account for that, but in my view, you should be credited for cascading your water the way you described here. Is How to Higg 2018 in different language versions available to download now? Regarding the download PDF versions, I'm not sure, but online, I believe that the Higg 2018 should be available in many different languages. Let us follow up with that soon, but it should be available in other languages as well. Yeah, and we have a few comments here as well. And okay, from where can we get a list of verifiers with their expertise area? There is a SAC, and we can send this to you after the webinar. There is a list of verifiers online that SAC provides. And there you can see if they are a generalist verifier or chemical specialist verifier. You can have their contact details, and you also see which countries they can verify in. Further information is, I believe, still not available online. So you need to contact them, the verifier, and ask them for their specific expertise. And then, yes, and is it recommended to have an action plan to help mills improve their score after the evaluation has been done? Yes, absolutely. Previously, SAC provided a template, a performance improvement plan template that the verifiers even filled out, or it was automatically populated. This year, you at the facilities, you are asked to develop an action plan by yourself, but you should of course also have a report from your verifier with the main findings and also some recommendations that you can then use for your improvement schedule. And I'm sorry, we are running out of time. There were a few more questions, but we will see if we can respond to these questions then offline. So thank you so much for all these great questions. And now I will run you through just a few final slides before we close in 2 minutes or so. So we have here a list of the countries where we conduct verifications. We offer training also and verification in many countries, and we have been verifying in several of the countries listed here. So if you are interested in verification, please get in touch. Also, please begin planning and scheduling your verification early so that we can find the best dates for the verification for you, and you can post your verified results as soon as possible. Because of course, as soon as you have the verified results available, posted, you can share them with your buyers, with your brands and retailers. And also in our experience, the months of October to December are very, very busy. So the earlier you plan, the easier it is also for us to find a suitable date for you. But and also here are our contact details. You can book a time slot with me online. You need to follow the instructions here, or you can also just contact us via email. And if you are based in Turkey, you can contact Alaaddin Okur also directly, and you see you find his email here where you can click to that. And now we have come to our final slides. One slide about our company, and here you see our team in the, so to say, inner circle. But as mentioned, we work with freelancers and partners in most regions of the world. So we can support you in many regions and countries. And before I say goodbye, I wish to inform you that there will be a survey with a few questions available after this webinar. We are so grateful for your input, so please take 2 minutes to respond to the survey. You shouldn't need more time for that. Thank you for joining us today, and goodbye. Bye-bye.